Our topic today really is getting kids to employ and to love applying those same skills. We're not PhDs in education theory, so what we have for you today are practical observations, and we're going to lead to some hypotheses about how we think that education and technology, bringing our kids closer to being producers of technology, and how that involves you, actually. So where I want to start is here at 6:50 a.m. At Smithfield Elementary School. When I learned that there was such a thing as not only Legos, but robots and Legos together, that was pretty much an irresistible combination for me. And so I started a Lego Robotics club at my kids' elementary school, and immediately fell in love with it. And that's these little guys over here that you got to touch and play with a little bit. I loved that logical thinking, the problem solving, symbolic language, debugging, which is really just solving problems that you created, right? And I noticed, however, that was applying those same skills. Get pizza, everybody. It's just sitting over there getting cold. Applying those same skills was tough for the kids. It's sort of abstract thinking. And so I looked around at what they're learning in school, and I said, there's nowhere in there in the coursework that they do and in how their teachers approach things that really teaches them those sort of skills, that problem solving, symbolic language, logically approaching something, sticking with it until you figure it out. And I looked broader around the world that we live in and saw there's not a lot that really leads kids into applying those skills. Tell me for a second, those of you, the sort of skills that you mentioned here, how many of you learned those in school? How many of you learned them out of school? All right, like where, for example? Where do you pick up on things like that?
I had a little old computer that I picked up like a VTech that I learned to program.
Okay, yeah, so he hacked it.
Well, I drove a school bus, problems solving,
Mm-hmm.
how script that works.
Right out. Okay, so, yeah, very practical approaches. I've got a problem to solve, and I sort of find my way through it, as opposed to being part of the education system. When we look at it, when I looked around and looked at education, I said, we're teaching our kids to be good consumers of technology, but not necessarily producers, people who understand, can control, and manipulate it. So I'm going to give you some examples, and I want you to just shout out whether you think these are a better example of a consumer or a producer. So I gave you the first one away, but you hear this, right? My 2-year-old can use my iPad. This is amazing. Producer or consumer? Consumer, right? I mean, the 2-year-old's not writing apps, I don't think yet. So that one's certainly clear. What about 14-year-old kid in Great Britain writes an app and is now a millionaire. I can't even remember what his app was. He's a producer. Learning to use Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. Shout it out. Consumer? Yeah, I think so. You're learning to use something, but you're not building it, right? Minecraft. I heard consumer. Both? What's on the producer side?
Buying the game.
Yeah, you build your own world. You can make skins. You can write the mods for it. So you can use it either way. Linux. Okay, yeah, it could be either, right? User writing, a good question. Arduino chips. More on the producer side, right? You have to understand more about what you're doing. I should have been clicking along here. When we look at the education system, then it sort of focuses on these things that are much on the producer side. And you'll hear this sort of language in education, I think. They talk about mastery, about testing. Math and science are subjects. They are things that you learn, and they're not necessarily the same thing. And they talk about technological literacy. So I mean, you attain a certain level, and then you're checked off. Okay, you can do that. If you dip into some of the literature around STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, or STEAM, science, technology, engineering, art, to bring the design component in there, and math, you'll hear different concepts, right? You'll hear more about what we need to instill in our kids is an innovative spirit and that they be self-reliant. They need to be able to understand and manipulate technology. There's not this sort of idea of a finite endpoint in there. And so there's a big difference, I think, in how our education system approaches, teaches kids to be consumers, and what we need to do to teach them to be producers. So we have 3 hypotheses for you about this interaction between kids and technology. The first one is that there is this difference between consumers and producers of technology. The second one is that education, as most of our educational system, has a consumer focus to it, really. And that's not faulting everyone, that's just how it's set up. Plus, on top of that, though, the speed of change, the disruptive technologies that are coming to be very common are kind of bewildering. So parents, teachers, students, they don't necessarily see, how would I get my kid into this? How would I get my students into this? Right? Or as a student, how do I approach that? And 3D printers are great, but they sound like something that's just as close as the moon. How do I touch that stuff? So that route isn't very clear. And I'd compare it to the on-ramp from the situation here. I'd compare it to the on-ramp coming on from the airport onto I-77 South. Anybody take that one? It's pretty short, right? I mean, you got to hammer it at the top of that ramp in order to get on there, and that's. I feel like our teachers and students and parents are sort of in the on ramp there, and they're saying, "Yikes! How would I get into this high speed movement of technology and so forth?" And I think our third hypothesis is that there's a merge technique. If I want to get my car in there, right? Tromp on the gas, I signal, check my shoulder, and I bowl my way over, right? There's a way to do it. And here's what I think we think there's a merge technique for getting kids to understand how they can get into science, technology, engineering, and math careers. The first one is the technology is moving so fast that I think it really has outpaced the educational system. That's not a fault of the teachers. That's not a fault of anyone. It's just kind of the way it is. But that means that to make kids successful here, we're not just going to be able to tweak the curriculum or train some teachers a little bit. The system doesn't roll in that same speed or direction. And so this is a unique challenge. It's more than just designing a different curriculum, I think. The second part of the merge technique about bringing kids and parents and teachers up to speed is that the technology is real accessible. Everybody's on a network. Everybody's got more computer in their pocket than most of us had growing up in like our whole school, right? You can write an app. Things are very accessible. David Taylor will talk about this and how he's made that accessible to his kids. And the third piece is that there are experts who know how to show kids the way, show teachers and parents the way into technology fields, and they are you, right? Because you guys understand, you're on I-77. If you can tap the brakes and slow down and show people, here's how you get into it, here's the things that you can do, here's an introduction to it, then it makes it very simple for them. David Dietrich is going to talk about some of those things. Right? So I'm done trying to lay the foundation of what we wanted to talk about, and I'm going to hand it over to David Taylor.
I teach a class that didn't exist at my school until about 5 years ago. And I was just teaching science and social studies. And I had my principal who was basically told me, "You're going to run an engineering club." I was like, "I don't want to run an engineering club." And she was like, "You're running an engineering club." So I'm like, "Thanks, boss." And I had some community engineers. And they just wanted to do some type of outreach and get kids interested in STEM. And we started off just using random things from doing bridges to just about anything, snap circuits with electronics, just whatever we could get our hands on. And eventually, we ended up finding some Mindstorms. Don't know where they came from, but we had 4 of them in our school. And we started using them. And we noticed that the kids really liked them. And eventually, I turned into a club, and we started participating in first Lego League and some sumo bot competitions, and our students started winning. And I'm at a traditional Title I school, high minority student population, so targeting those students that can help fill a pipeline that our country's lacking as a whole. And our kids have embraced this, and now it's a course. The thing is, along the way, trying to find these skill sets, you got to learn these first. I didn't have these skill sets. I didn't go to college for this. But there are a lot of resources, and there's a lot of people in the community that are offering to help you learn these skills. And getting the kids interested in it, because there's so many courses in school where it's either right or wrong. It's like 2 + 2 has to equal 4. Or you forgot your period. It's like right or wrong. So getting kids to want to experiment, getting them involved where you teach them a little bit, let them go with it, and then let them run with it. Giving them time to just explore. A lot of the things I teach, I'm not great at, I'm not a master at, but I'm willing to let my kids experiment with them. And I take the philosophy of video games. You buy a video game, how many of you guys actually read the instructions? No one. You pop it in and you just go buck wild on it until you realize that you're doing this great or you suck at this. And then you might hit the internet or talk to friends. That's what I let my kids do. Anytime we start a new software, a new project, give them a new instrument, if they can just play with it for a while, they end up learning more. And then I tell them, you can't ask me. You got to ask somebody else. And then they realize that some kid that might not be the greatest at math, but is good at physically doing things with their hands, end up figuring out that, they can manipulate this. And then they become like the go-to kid. And everyone has different skills and strengths. I mean, that's what our society is built on. And the kids figure that out along the way. And there's a lot of different mediums that you can use, from extremely inexpensive items to over the top, depending on what you have. But giving them that opportunity to explore and mess up, that there isn't a right answer right away, so that they literally learn from making mistakes, is so important. We take it for granted with just, even at my own job, with like, I got stuff that's due at this time, I didn't do it right, you hear about it when you don't do something right. So it's teaching kids it's okay to make mistakes, because through making mistakes, we always learn something. And it's awesome to let them build something. Like I did this activity at the beginning of the year, and with aqueducts. I gave them a bunch of random stuff, and all I did was give them some parameters. Told them they needed to get water from point A to point B, and you had 3 class periods to build it. And they had a certain amount of materials, and they could use that. But I told them I wanted them to do design sketches first. So they all designed it out, they built it, realized it didn't work, scrapped it, built another one. But a lot of times we don't have that time to do that because we have deadlines, and we have to get that done and get it in. So we want to do it right the first time, but we realize that we learn so much, not just in school, but in life, from messing up and gaining from that. In my classroom, I feel like I'm really lucky because I get to teach pretty much what I want to an extent. And I've had the opportunity to meet some amazing people that are specialists in this. There's some guys in here, sitting here from Hackerspace, that are awesome, that are doing great things. And they're making inexpensive materials for kids to use, and they're reaching out in the community. I want to see more teachers and more people getting involved and helping teachers do that. Because a lot of teachers are nervous. I mean, when I started this off, I could teach you biology, I knew basic chemistry, but I didn't know how to wire something, how to solder, how to use CAD software, and you got to put the time in, you got to learn these. And as long as everyone's working together, and like at my school, we have a wonderful community support group who brings in, and there's networking, there's resources. Just like people in the professional world network, if you have kids, you need to be putting that pressure on your teachers in your school to get them to be networking with professionals like yourself. Because that networking is what's going to get us to merge onto that highway smoothly to get this to work. And using challenges. Having challenges creates competitiveness. Everyone likes competitiveness. I mean, this weekend, everyone's watching the Super Bowl. It's one of the most appealing American things with competition, and it's going to spend billions upon billions of dollars. Enter competition in your classroom, and I try to do that all the time. And some things I have that I think are pretty cool. Are there things I could be doing better? Yes, but it's always trying to learn something new and push further. We brought some NXT robots. Are they the best thing out there? No. Are they something to get kids hooked? Yes. And I think it's getting them hooked and not realizing that not every kid is going to be a programmer. Not every kid's going to be an architect. But those skill sets that you guys use all day, that problem solving, like we talked about earlier, that looking for solutions, experimenting, those skills can be applied in almost every job that's out there. I mean, even from guys that are working on the roads, hey, is every road gonna look the same when you pop it up? Or is every pipe gonna pop and bust and spew water the same way? No. But we try to find common things that can teach great skill sets to help kids. And it's always trying to push. We went from having a few robots to now having a class. And I didn't have a lot of resources. I don't even have a budget. But grants are out there. Grants are wonderful. I have a program that I've helped build up, and I've had impact from people that have helped me along the way, from college professors to other school teachers. And those help drive you, help create your vision for what you want to do. And if you have a school that's near you, all of you have a skill set that's very impactful. I mean, obviously, you're all getting paid to do something a lot more than I am. And that was supposed to be a joke. But if you can reach out to those people, it can help, because in all reality, what is our society going to look like in 20 years? Are we just going to outsource everything? Or are we going to have every single bit of manufacturing gone? I mean, what jobs are out there? The jobs that are making money are the skills and college degrees that no one wants to go into. I mean, math and science, I hate when parents come, oh, my kid's just not very good at math. Like, who cares? I mean, there's so much math where you can actually use application. And like I had my kids doing Ohm's Law this week. Teaching them how to use multimeters was great. Are they screwing up? Yeah, but they're learning how to use a multimeter. How many people learn how to use a multimeter in 7th grade? I had kids soldering today. It was a blast. I mean, was it real basic? Yeah, I just had wire, LEDs, cutting them up, and they were soldering in practice, and they thought it was the greatest thing on earth. It's a skill set. Could I be doing a lot cooler things with microchip boards? Yeah. But it's a process, and I'm learning that process as well. We just got a 3D printer. What do you got, a maker? Yeah, we just got an up, but I wrote a grant for it, so it was great. And we're teaching CAD. Right now, I'm working out what type of CAD I want my kids to learn. I got my 6th graders doing Tinker, looking at doing SketchUp, and possibly 8th grades doing Fusion. But having those different skill sets and learning that, hey, you can make something, being that creator, not just consuming things. That is where we need to be moving with our school systems, with children as a whole. And it's just impactful on our society that we make this push. I'm just real passionate about what I do, and I'm thankful for what I do. But just pushing further than we should be, because sometimes, as Dad said, our schools are trying to catch up. I mean, we're still passing, like, deciding if kids should be using cell phones in school. I mean, it's just, we gotta think outside the box. And there's a lot of teachers that don't want to do that. I mean, I let my kids have their phones out, they do research, they want to use a calculator, let them go. What's the big deal? It's just teaching them that there's a time and place for everything. It's like, you go to a party, you know what to do at a party. You come to work, you know what to do at work. And that's a skill set within itself. But that's all I got.
All right, so this was. Yeah. Okay. So sorry, we missed it. We missed the
Oh.
the Java demonstration.
Yeah, I used Khan Academy because I was doing too much icon-based coding, and I was looking for something that was free that I could learn myself pretty quickly. And because Khan Academy had their computer science that came out last year, and a professor at CPCC showed me this and started using it. And because it has tutorials along with it, it was so easy. I show a 3-minute video clip, then I go, here, go screw around with this for 10 minutes. And next thing I know, I had a kid make over his spring break last spring, he made a fully functional tic-tac-toe game where you could play 2 players and actually click the area for an X or a 0, and then if you won, it drew a line through it. It was, when he put it on a Word document, he was saving it on his flash drive, it ended up being 28 pages of code. And the kid was in 8th grade. I mean, he was a huge nerd, and I love him for it. But he just worked on, and what I did with my 6th graders this year, I helped them do through art. Everyone talks about being creative, artistic. Start off just, here's your first assignment. Learn how to make these shapes, how to do fill and colors. Now make something. And I mean, it was ridiculous what some of the kids did just by little experimentation.
All right, my name is David Dietrich. I'm an analytics consultant at Wells Fargo. My motivation are my 2 daughters. And Thad challenged me about that. It's not just my 2 daughters, it's the time constraints now, right? Because I was always interested in my own professional development and volunteering, but now I also have kids and their school. So I'm thinking about the 20 years from now that David talked about. Where are they going to be when they're 26 and 22? What's the rest of the kids that are their age today? What are they going to be doing? Because that's the world they're going to be living in. There's a couple books I looked at, really repeats what these guys are saying. How Kids Succeed. It's really about that cycle, the loop that we've been talking about today. Try it, it doesn't work, try something else, go ask somebody, try a third thing, come back later, say, this could have been better if we did this. Learning that you can figure it out, make it better, and produce something stays with you much longer than that specific technology, right? The important thing for the kids to learn is that they can learn it and accomplish it, even if their parents didn't do it, even if they have a lot of friends who aren't interested in it. But if it's what they're interested in, there's a way to conquer it. And that's going to be gone in 3 years. They're going to need to conquer something else, right? My job today, your jobs, it didn't exist when I was in high school or grade school. So, there's no way to prepare the specific skills that I use today. But the preparation I got did prepare me to learn that I can keep doing it, and I can figure it out. The other book that I look at that I really like is Making Thinking Visible, and I actually use it with my daughter now. It's easy to do that yes-no answer. Your 6-year-old asks you something, you say yes, you're right, no, you're wrong. Maybe you say no, you're wrong because, but it's still a yes-no. What that book talks about, make sure you understand that the yes was arrived at correctly. So there's a phrase that I've started using. What makes you say that? So if my daughter says something and she's right or wrong, say, what makes you say that? Find what's the thinking behind that statement that she made. And you'll be surprised at how interesting process she got to that answer or how wrong it is. But then you can work on what the learning needs to be. There's a story in that book about a science teacher who hates the last question. His students will get all the yes, no's right, all the multiple choices right. Then when he puts the essay question, explain why this is right, it's creative writing time. And not that creative, it's just, they know that the answer should be B, but they can't tell you why. Which means they can't apply it somewhere else. And they can't, one of the phrases David uses a lot is make it their own, right? Mm-hmm. Get them down the road and get them to a certain point where they can try their own project and extend it and make that technology their own. So there's a couple groups that I'm working with One is the Analytics and Big Data Society, kind of my professional group in Charlotte. We're looking at ways to give back to the community, and we're partnering with Discovery Place. David's already worked with Discovery Place on their robotics projects. But as Thad said, the professionals in Charlotte, they have all the knowledge and resources that the teachers need, right? So what we're trying to do is pull these things together and build sort of modules with Discovery Place for teacher training. They've got a STEM teacher education program. So it doesn't stay with David, or it doesn't stay with, one teacher in each school. We can expand it through the teachers. And, I'm a systems guy, so scaling it is what's important to me. Not just that David's got a great environment set up, but how do we scale it so that every school has a David, or has the resources that a teacher can become, David? And how do we expand it, right? Discovery Place is a nice building, but there's 150,000 kids in CMS.
146,000.
So that's a lot of kids. I don't think they all get to Discovery Place. And, Dave and I talked just the logistics. Some of these things, like from the industry standpoint, a plant tour would be great for people to see robotics in action in the advanced manufacturing or in the 3D printing that we have in South Carolina. But it's hard to get buses and logistics to, run 150,000 kids through, local plants. So what if we had video? What if we had a video plant tour that could be shared on the web through all the classrooms, as an introduction to a robotics module? So there's a lot of ideas out there. If you're interested in working with us, let me know. One of the other ones we're working on is for the analytics side, we need data. All these kind of STEM areas either are based on data or generate a lot of data. But we need sort of publicly available data. So we're talking to the city of Charlotte. We'll be able to use some of their public data. And the other things that we talked about earlier, collaborations or competitions between schools or between robotics clubs. Maybe there's a Skype tutoring thing where, the hub is at David's school, but if there's a few kids interested in robotics at a different school, the older kids in David's school could get them going. Because to me, that's another piece. You haven't really learned something till you've got to teach it to somebody else, and you start seeing where they're stumbling, because maybe it came to you easy. Maybe you don't really know the wrong turns until you actually have to teach it and say, no, it's this way. So with that, any questions for any of the three of us? I guess I did have one more slide. The end result of that from the community standpoint is kind of a jobs and opportunity magnet, right? If we can promote the fact that we've got groups of people really engaged with the schools, building the pipeline of talent, and at the same time you're working on that, you're building your own network in Charlotte, you're building your own professional development in the different technologies that you work with, and we can just make that pipeline work. That makes us much more attractive for corporate relocations or expansions in our area, which keeps us employed. And as I mentioned before, I have 20 more years of work until they get out of college. So, yeah.
Okay.
Question?
Previous slide, you said big data. Is that an actual community name of something, or is that just big data?
There is an analytics and big data group that formed a year ago in Charlotte. Talk to me later.
I guess we'll hang around for a little while, but I hope that we've brought across to you those three basic hypotheses that we've observed, and one of which involves you. So there's that difference between consumers and producers. The educational system needs some help to try to get up to speed so that they can teach kids in this more in the producer mindset, and that one of the really key pieces in doing that is to get the involvement, such as supporting a teacher or with Discovery Place or other groups that can touch and to help to bring the schools and the teachers the sort of resources and knowledge and things that they might need. So those are the three ideas. Thanks for having us, and we'll stick around. And I see a question in the back.
So recently, the county, I think, did a
hacking contest using the GIS data that they have, so the location information, geological stuff. Have you considered like getting the kids involved in that because they want to do it again? They didn't have a lot of participation, so that'd be a great thing. I mean, the kids could come in and sort of upstage everybody. I think that'd be a huge win, a lot of publicity. So.
Yes, talk to me after this. Absolutely.